Every legendary company begins with a single story. Apple's journey started long before the world knew its name. On February 24th, 1955, a baby named Steve Jobs was born in San Francisco, California. Shortly after his birth, he was adopted by Paul and Clara Jobs, who raised him with love and care. As a child, Steve was endlessly curious and loved taking apart electronic devices to understand how they worked. His father patiently taught him how to use tools and inspired his passion for engineering. During his teenage years, Steve met a brilliant young engineer named Steve Wozniak. The two quickly became close friends. United by their shared passion for electronics and innovation, Wozniak had extraordinary technical skills, while Steve Jobs had a powerful vision for the future. Together, they dreamed of putting a computer into the hands of ordinary people. At the time, computers were huge, expensive machines used only by large organizations. Steve Jobs briefly worked at Atari, where he gained valuable experience in the technology industry. Soon after, he traveled to India in search of spiritual wisdom and a new perspective on life. When he returned to California, his vision was clearer than ever before. Steve convinced Wozniak that they should build their own personal computer. It was a bold idea that few people believed could succeed. To raise money, Steve Jobs sold his Volkswagen van. Steve Wozniak sold his treasured HP scientific calculator. With very little money but unlimited determination, they began their journey. Their workplace was not a modern office. It was the small garage of Steve Jobs. Parents? Day and night, they worked tirelessly, building circuit boards by hand. Every component was carefully assembled with precision and hope. Their first creation became known as the Apple I computer. Steve believed this invention could change the future of personal computing. They approached local computer stores, hoping someone would believe in their idea. Most people ignored them, but they refused to give up. Finally, the Byte Shop placed an order for 50 Apple I computers. It was the breakthrough they had been waiting for. Working around the clock, they assembled every computer by hand inside the garage. As the first Apple computers left the garage, a new chapter in technology history had begun. What started in a small family garage would soon become one of the most valuable companies the world had ever seen. The success of the Apple I proved that Steve Jobs' vision was becoming a reality. To take the company to the next level, Apple needed more investment and stronger leadership. In 1977, investor Mike Markula joined. Apple believed the company could become a Fortune 500 business. With new funding, Apple officially transformed from a small garage startup into a real company. The team immediately began working on a more advanced computer called the Apple II. Unlike the Apple I, the Apple II was designed for everyday people, not just hobbyists. It featured a plastic case, color graphics, and an easy-to-use design. Customers were amazed by how simple and powerful the Apple II was. Sales exploded across the United States. Apple quickly became one of the fastest-growing technology companies in the world. Millions of dollars began flowing into the young company. Steve Jobs dreamed of making Apple a household name, but success also brought enormous pressure. Steve demanded perfection from every employee and every product. Long working hours became normal inside Apple. The company began developing even more ambitious computers. One of those projects became known as Lisa. Although Lisa introduced groundbreaking technology, its high price limited its success. Steve Jobs refused to let one setback stop Apple's progress. During a visit to Xerox PRC, Steve discovered the graphical user interface and the computer mouse. He immediately realized this technology could change personal computing forever. Steve challenged his engineers to build a computer that anyone could use. That vision became the Macintosh project. Engineers worked day and night to make the Macintosh a reality. In January 1984, Apple introduced the Macintosh to the world. The unforgettable launch instantly captured global attention. The Macintosh changed how people interacted with computers forever. Apple's reputation for innovation grew stronger than ever. But behind the scenes, disagreements inside the company were becoming more serious. Those internal conflicts would soon lead to one of the biggest turning points in Apple's history. Despite the success of the Macintosh, serious tensions were growing inside Apple. Steve Jobs' demanding leadership style created conflicts with many executives. The company's board began questioning whether Steve Jobs should continue leading Apple. In the YouTube aisle, everything changed. Steve Jobs was forced to leave the company he had founded. It was one of the most painful moments of his life. Losing Apple could have ended his story, but Steve refused to give up. Instead of looking back, he chose to build something new. Steve founded a new computer company called Next. Next focused on creating powerful computers for education and business. Although Next was not a huge commercial success, its technology was years ahead of its time. Around the same period, Steve invested in a small animation studio called Pixar. Few people believed Pixar would become successful. Steve patiently supported the company through difficult years. In 1995, Pixar released Toy Story, the world's first fully computer-animated feature film. Toy Story became a global blockbuster and transformed Pixar forever. Steve Jobs suddenly found himself leading another incredibly successful company. While Steve was achieving success elsewhere, Apple was facing serious problems. Apple's products were becoming confusing, and sales were falling rapidly. Competitors like Microsoft were dominating the personal computer market. Apple was losing money and struggling to survive. Many experts believed Apple might soon disappear. The company urgently needed new leadership and a fresh vision. In 1996, Apple made a surprising decision. Apple acquired Next to bring its technology into the company. That decision also brought Steve Jobs back to Apple. Employees welcomed Steve's return with hope and excitement. Steve immediately began simplifying Apple's products and rebuilding the company. His bold decisions restored confidence inside Apple. A remarkable comeback had officially begun, setting the stage for one of the greatest business turnarounds in history. The launch of the colorful iMac marked the beginning of Apple's incredible comeback. Customers loved its unique design, and the iMac quickly became a worldwide success. Apple was profitable once again, and confidence returned to the company. But Steve Jobs was only getting started. In 1998, Apple introduced a small device that would change the music industry forever, the iPod. With the slogan 1,000 songs in your pocket, the iPod became an instant success. Millions of people around the world chose Apple for the first time. Soon after, Apple launched the iTunes Store, changing the way people bought and listened to music. Steve Jobs had an even bigger vision for the future. In 2007, he stepped onto the stage and introduced the first iPhone. The iPhone wasn't just another phone. It completely reinvented the smartphone. Customers lined up for hours outside Apple stores to get their hands on it. The App Store opened the door for millions of developers and transformed the mobile industry. In 2010, Apple introduced the iPad, creating an entirely new product category. Apple products became an essential part of everyday life for millions of people. Even while facing serious health challenges, Steve Jobs never stopped working to shape Apple's future. His passion for innovation inspired employees and entrepreneurs around the world. On October 5, 2011, Steve Jobs passed away, leaving behind an extraordinary legacy. Tim Cook became Apple's new CEO and continued building on Steve Jobs' vision. Under Tim Cook's leadership, Apple introduced products like the Apple Watch and AirPods. Apple continued pushing the boundaries of technology with every new generation of devices. The company also developed its own powerful Apple Silicon chips, setting new performance standards. Apple Park became a symbol of innovation, creativity, and the company's future. Today, Apple is one of the most valuable companies in the world. Every day, billions of people rely on Apple products to work, learn, create, and communicate. What began inside a small family garage became a global technology empire. Steve Jobs proved that determination, creativity, and bold thinking can change the world. Apple's story reminds us that every great success begins with a single dream, and that dream continues to inspire millions of entrepreneurs around the globe. This is the incredible story of Apple, from a humble garage startup to one of the greatest companies in history.